Hi, I'm Colby,
And I'm Daniel.
and today we want to talk about Akira Kurosawa's 1985 film, Ran. This is one of the best films of all time, and I'd highly recommend it to everyone. If it's not on your list of movies to watch, put it on now, because this film is incredible. What I love about this film is that it combines the best of theater with the best of film. So the plot of the movie is basically an adaptation of King Lear. There's a few small changes, but overall it's kind of trading feudal England for feudal Japan. And it's about a king who has to pass on his empire to his three sons instead of three daughters like in the play. The beginning of this film is really exciting, both thematically and visually. So it starts off in rural Japan, where you have the king and his three sons, as well as some attendants and rival lords, all going on a hunt together. And all of the main characters wear these beautiful primary color clothing, which visually looks really cool, but is also really helpful for the viewer to keep track of all the different characters. So again, what's really cool about this film is that it combines this gravitas of theater with this exceptional realism of film. And so kind of going off that, the film starts with kind of a simple idea, and it expands upon that throughout the rest of the film. So basically, the king is trying to divide up his empire among his three sons. But the youngest son warns the king that they've grown up in a world where the king has been conquering and violent and overthrown rival kings, and that they grow up in this world, and so that's how the world is made, and that if he tries to divide the empire among them, that there's going to be treachery among the brothers. And the king gets really frustrated and throws him out because he says this. So this theme that violence creates violence is overarching throughout the rest of the film. And this idea that you have to pay for the crimes that you did in the past, that they will come back to get you, are kind of just methodically mulled over in the film again and again. And I think that is one of the aspects that's really, really cool in this film.
So I love how in this film it takes that really simple theme that violence begets violence and your crimes will ultimately come back to haunt you, and then repeats that every act for the sort of 5-act structure.
Yeah.
So in each act, his sons disrespect him more and try and take more and more power from him. He finds out, or we see a new sort of crime that he committed back in the days that he was assembling this empire, and his physical and mental state deteriorate to the point where, by the 4th act, he's got just like absolutely crazy hair. He's wearing the same clothes that are now like ashy and dirty, and he's just absolutely insane because he can't bear to face this awful, cruel, violent world that he has created. Yeah. He's forced to confront the victims of his violence. So, for instance, the daughters whose father he killed, the son that he blinded, and the son that he actually exiled. And so this facing what he's done is just too much for him, and he's not able to handle it.
There's a point late in the film where the jester, who's also taking care of the king, tells another servant that in a mad world, being mad is the sanest thing. And I think that this is really great summation of what happens, that the king cannot look at the world that he created and be happy and be normal. He just kind of explodes because of how horrible it really is, and how depressing that everything that he created, like, this is actually what he created now that he can see the truth of it.
Yeah, and I think one of the brilliance of this film is the way, because the actor for Hidatora is so good. I mean, incredible Oscar, amazing performance.
Yeah, clearly.
You're sympathetic to him. You like him. He's a likable, charismatic character, and you kind of think, yeah, why are these sons being ungrateful to him? But now I've stopped to think about it. His plan is ridiculous. He wants to spend his retirement literally around like the victims of his war. Yeah. That is his plan at the beginning. And so I think that it tricks you because you see the protagonist as sympathetic, and then you see the characters who are working against him as sort of unsympathetic and antagonistic. But if you stop to think about it, the antagonist is a woman whose father was murdered, and she was dragged out of this castle where she grew up.
Yeah. And
she's just exacting revenge upon the family that destroyed her life. She's completely justified.
Right.
And so I think that is a really incredible thing, the way that the film tricks you into being quite sympathetic with a character who really should not be.
I think that's one of the brilliance of the kind of theater and film combination, because since it's a film and there's a certain amount of realism, you assume that there's a certain amount of honesty with the perspective and point of view of the film.
Right.
But life is never like that. And so the fact that Lady Cade, who's portrayed as a villain, and not just portrayed as a villain, portrayed as like crazy and just mean and personally evil, is clearly like from a certain perspective that you look at it, and that you could have this movie have a different POV where she's much more sympathetic. But because they're kind of going for this more theatrical element, they play her up to be a bad guy, and like they play her up to be quite disconcerting and scary. And I think that that is just a reflection of the angle that they're choosing to film from. I think also because the king is such a good actor and you're so sympathetic towards him, is that you're really hoping towards the end that he's able to recover and get his kingdom back, like beyond any time that it makes sense. And so then when Sabaru gets killed, it feels like such a gut punch, but it's really just the most logical thing that would happen. Like, of course, he has to watch all of his sons die, because that's the world that he created. He killed the sons of his rivals, and of course, he personally has to watch all of his sons die before he can die.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so all of that would make it an amazing film that probably would deserve to be on one of these lists already.
Yeah.
But then we get some of the most incredible battle scenes I've ever seen on film. Ever anywhere. So first off, just some things. They're just real castles that they're filming in. That's just really cool.
Real castles that they burn down.
Yeah, we're not talking like they burned some of it. Like, they burned this huge ass tower. Like, it's like a 4-story tower that is on fire while people are shooting arrows into it. Like, real arrows.
They're some of the best shots I've ever seen. Like, it looks so cool and so, like, such an incredible battle. Honestly, even films now, it's hard to think of one that's comparable as far as like visually what that looks like.
Really, it's only the Lord of the Rings I can think of. But even in the Lord of the Rings, a lot of that is CGI, and I want to be clear, I am supportive of using CGI, especially when it's good. And I would not recommend what they did in this film, because I think they actually just filmed an actor in a burning building, which is not safe, and I would not recommend doing. But it is an incredible effect. Yeah. They also have like hundreds of horses and thousands of extras.
Yeah. This is where they take some of the fun parts of theater and they're able to really build on it, because obviously in a stage you can't have hundreds of actors fighting real lifelike battles, but in the film you can. Like, they have these huge large scale battles. It's like hundreds of men running, people on horses. It looks like people are getting trampled. Like, I have no idea how they safely filmed this. Maybe they didn't safely film it, but it's like coordinated. It's also incredibly clear to see what's going on because all the soldiers are wearing like the color of whoever they're fighting with. So it's a lot going on, but you can still understand it. And I think that it clearly has inspired any sort of large scale battle afterwards. Like, especially Lord of the Rings, those battle scenes are just some of the best battle scenes I've ever seen. I think the violence in the film also really helps to heighten all of the themes and points of the film, but it gets this added realism that I think works even better than maybe even on stage. One of the other things I love about the film is when Kurosawa just cuts to these beautiful clouds, and the clouds are just kind of like evolving and forming. And to me, that really connects to this point of the kind of inevitability that if you create a situation a certain way, that of course it's going to unfold in a certain way. At least that's how I see it when I see those clouds.
That's interesting, because I was seeing it as that the clouds are peaceful and heaven is sort of the opposite of earth, and that you've got this horrible, violent world, but you've got these beautiful, peaceful clouds. Yeah. And I think that's very much
it too.
No. I think I think it's a very artistic or theatrical part where he just cuts to that, and I think it's quite open for interpretation.
This film is incredible. You have to watch it. I think sometimes it's not as high up on these like great movie lists because Kurosawa has so many other amazing movies, And then he had this extremely full career, like in the 1950s and early 1960s, that he has so many films that are so essential for film history and influencing of so many other films. I think it's the easiest of his films to get into because it's kind of more adapt for modern audiences, the way that some of the 1950 movies are maybe a bit slower. Obviously would recommend all of them.
I think some of the earlier films that he has have really cool premises and they work off of that, but are easy to take your own premise and do it a different way. To take your own similar premise and do it in a different way. Whereas this takes a really classic premise and then does it perfectly.
Yeah.
So maybe there's just not as much to take from it because it's like, oh, well, that was great.
Yeah.
And that was just perfect, and that was just the way you should have done it.
Yeah.
And because it's perfect, there's nothing you can take from it necessarily. I don't know if that's fair, or maybe it's just the fact that if you're making a list of top 100 movies, you can't have 10 of them be Kurosawa.
But maybe you should. You should definitely consider it, okay? That would be my takeaway.
Right.
I also want to give a big thank you to the Prince Charles Theater for having this available to watch. It was really incredible to see it on the big screen.
We've been excited about this for like a year.
Yeah.
Like an actual year. We've been looking forward to watching it, and it did not disappoint. It's a great little cinema, and it's a great movie.
Yeah, so huge thank you to the Prince Charles Theater, and looking forward to seeing more films at the theater, and I'd highly recommend you check it out yourself. So anyway, thanks for watching.